for your insightful remarks and for all of the hard efforts and all the hard work that you're doing for Ukraine and with the partners like Germany. I'm very excited for our upcoming panel conversation, and what I will do is I will welcome our panelists on stage to join me here and join me in these chairs, and I'll do just very quick panel introductions, and then we'll kick it off with the questions. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Mihai Popșoi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova. Wojciech Wrokna, who is the Secretary of State, Government of Plenipotentiary for Strategic Energy Infrastructure, Ministry of Energy of Poland. Greg Arnczak, Deputy Minister of Natural Resources of Canada. Jean-Charles Malkinombre, who is the NATO Assistant Secretary General for Cyber Defense and Digital Transformation. Maxim Timchenko, CEO of DTEC Group. Stefan Kapfera, CEO of 50 Hertz. And Olena Pavlenko, President of Dixie Group. What a distinguished group we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. For the first questions that we have, this whole conference is really about redefining the definition of what is the next century of energy security. It has truly changed, especially in the last 10 years, and particularly since the full-scale invasion in 2022. It changed in the ways we look at physical protection, the ways we look at decentralization, and just overall preparedness, and what does it mean to be ready. So the most important lesson for Europe, has it been learned? Are there still things that are unclear? Are there still assumptions that we can no longer afford? Which assumptions should be challenged? Are there still lessons that haven't been fully learned? All of these are really big and very serious questions, and I can't think of anyone who could address them better than our upcoming speaker here, Stefan Ruinolf, who's the Parliamentary State Secretary at the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. Unfortunately, Minister Reicha could not join us today, but it is my distinct pleasure to welcome State Secretary to the stage to address this question, to kick off this very important discussion.
So, dear Minister Schmichal, dear Minister Popșoi, dear Minister Wadefuhl, ladies and gentlemen, Russia's full-scale invasion forced Europe to rethink energy security. It shattered old assumptions, it exposed dangerous illusions. In 2022, Europe stood on the edge of an energy disaster. Gazprom controlled a quarter of Germany's gas storage. More than half of our gas imports came from Russia. Those days are over, and they will not return. Europe will not go back to Russian oil and gas, not now, not ever. Russia's energy wars go far beyond blackmail. Its relentless strikes on Ukraine's energy system have turned energy infrastructure into a battlefield. Energy providers have become part of Europe's security architecture. For Ukraine, the last winter was unlike any winter before. Russia escalated its attacks to a new level. Energy production became part of the war effort. Every kilowatt hour became a strategic asset. Every repair team worked under fire. In March 2026 alone, Russia launched more than 6,500 drones and missiles. Only days ago, 1,567 drones and 56 missiles hit Ukraine within 48 hours. The goal is clear: break Ukraine's resilience by breaking its energy system. That's what Russia wants. And this is why speed matters, and why our support must match the urgency on the ground. And Germany stands with Ukraine. We are the largest bilateral donor in the energy sector, with more than 1.2 billion euros in emergency support. And after Katharina Reiches, my minister's visit last October to Kiev, she created an interministerial task force. It connects directly with Ukrainian and German energy companies. And those energy companies are represented today here as well. It listens, it reacts, it delivers, and 3 priorities guide our work here. More spare parts faster. Deliveries from German companies have surged compared to previous heating season, and strong support for Ukraine Energy Support Fund, which is utmost importance. Germany contributes 557 million euros, 1/3 of all funds, and the share of German-made equipment rose from 11% to 20%. And let me mention the 3rd point: strategic reserves. Germany and German funding now supports Ukraine's plan to build spare parts stockpiles. This strengthens the system before the next wave of attacks. And this task force shows what matters now: partnership that act, not just promise. And Germany has rebuilt its energy policy from the ground up. We replaced 100% of Russian pipeline gas. We built world-class LNG infrastructure in record time. And Norway, and just come from Norway, I just landed, Norway now supplies around half of our natural gas. And let me just hint to the importance of Gassco, of the Norwegian partnership as well. So here we have got support, and we also got support from the US. The United States has become our main LNG partner, and we hardened our critical infrastructure. We protect pipelines, grids, and subsea assets with physical, digital, and military means. Our Navy patrols the North and Baltic Seas to deter sabotage and monitor Russia's shadow fleet. And energy security is now part of our national security. Germany's new National Security Council coordinates this effort, and my minister, Katharina Reiche, brings in the energy security perspective into this forum, and economic strength and national defense now moves together. Europe must build lasting resilience. That means enough LNG import capacity to replace Russian pipeline gas permanently. Germany invests in stationary LNG terminals and stronger grid links with our neighbors. And security through sovereignty and strength, that must be our guiding principle. The war also teaches us critical infrastructure is not a civilian sanctuary. It's a target. We must integrate civilian and military expertise to defend it against sabotage, cyber attacks, drones, and missiles. And decentralization is another pillar of resilience. Ukraine shows the way. Gas turbines, renewables, battery storage, decentralized heating, island mode capability, grid-forming converters. These technologies keep systems alive even under attack. And resilience has become a fashionable word, but here it means something far more serious. It means survival. It means keeping Ukraine alive in a war that targets its energy system every single day. We must learn from Ukraine, but our first duty is clear: to strengthen Ukraine. Strengthen its energy system, strengthen its ability to withstand and recover, strengthen its capacity to win this energy war. And today we want to understand even better what is Ukraine's current strategy for energy production and how we can reinforce it. Europe can learn. Europe can learn a great deal from Ukraine. But learning is not enough. Action is what now counts. And let us act with urgency. Let us act with purpose. And let us act to ensure Ukraine endures. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, State Secretary, and we wish the Minister a quick recovery. Wow, what an incredible panel. We will jump right in because we have limited time. Mr. Timchenko, I'm going to start off with you. DTEC has been keeping lights on in Ukraine for over 4 years now during the most impossible circumstances. Has Europe fully understood the risks and the potential for expansion for these energy issues into the broader European continent? Or do you feel like there's still too much comfort in terms of how the energy risk assessment is being done? And when we think about already preparations for the upcoming winter, this was one of the toughest winters Ukraine has had, with no gas, no water, and no electricity in some communities for extended periods of times. As we think about preparations for winter, not just in Ukraine, but across Europe, where do you see the biggest opportunities in partnerships with Ukraine?
Thank you, Olga. Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. And first of all, I would like to thank to German government, German people, to all of you for the fact that we survived 4 winters during the war. And answering your question, of course, being here in Foreign Office of Germany and talking about energy security is a very good signal how seriously it's taken here in Germany. And I'm sure that German government will be leading in building new architecture of energy security of European continent. I remember in 2022 when we were asking for support, for help, for equipment, for financial aid, I was saying that time will come. Please help us now, and time will come when we will pay off. And probably this time is already. And our payoff in sharing our experience and lessons we learned. And lessons we paid huge price for the last 4 years. But time will come when it will not be only our experience and lessons learned, but also all the potential we have in Ukraine, in gas storage facilities, in gas production, in renewables, in all the other resources. And I don't see energy security of Europe without Ukraine. So, but coming back to our experience, so I run the company, the largest private energy company in Ukraine. Our power generation facilities were destroyed at the level of 80 to 90%, 3 times during 4 years. And if you can imagine, 5 power stations, 80% of power units damaged or destroyed. And 4 times we recovered nearly 90% of this. This is something that you cannot read about and get this from seminars or from the universities. This is only experience of life. And what we learn, probably 3 P's, what I defined for myself. How to be prepared. Number 1, you should realize that having attack of 500 drones and 300 missiles, there is no chance that you can avoid damage of your equipment. But the question is how minimize negative impact of these attacks. So number one, people. Your people should be trained and understand what to do during the attack and what to do after attack. What is crisis management? Where are bomb shelters? What is safety protocols? How you stop turbines, knowing that in 10 minutes it will be hit, just to minimize the damage of turbine. And after attack, how to recover. We have 36 black starts of our power stations. If you take my colleagues probably here in this room, if you have black start, it's emergency situation. If your power station is lost capacity. In our case, 36 times, and we know how to do it. So number one is people. And what is important part about people is motivation of people. When they see that 3, 4, 5 times destroyed what was recovered for 5 months, you need to keep running. You need to keep people motivated to do it another time, another time. Number two, planning. And planning starting from high level, new design of electricity grid, and it was already said a lot about decentralization and microgrids, going to planning of stockpiling. You should understand what are most vulnerable parts of your production facility, in our case, transformers of all types, and how to build reserves of transformers. And it's not only about how to place order and wait for 9, 12 months. It's do we have enough production capacity in Europe to produce this quantity of transformers needed not only for Ukraine, but for European countries. And probably this is what people should start thinking now. We cannot afford that. I can state about 30 or 40% of transformers coming to Ukraine, they're coming from China, because there are not enough capacity to produce transformers in Europe. So planning. And number three, protection. I'm very grateful to Minister Reiche for her visit to Ukraine in October 25, and to one of our power stations, which is the largest thermal power station. And thanks to her visit, we managed to save this power station after 3 intensive attacks of Russians. And it's all about how we call it multi-layered protection, starting from sandbags and concrete blocks and going to very sophisticated systems like IRIS-T. And if you have this multi-layered protection in the system, and you have very active interaction of energy workers and managers of the power station with air defense forces we have next to power station, then you have a chance to minimize this damage. So, as already said, we have a lot to share, and we want to share, because having this event, and I think many more events talking about energy security, we are investing in energy security not only Ukraine, but the whole European continent.
Thank you so much, Mr. Timchenko. I appreciate your comments and laying out specific, tangible solutions, not just big visions for us, but specific, almost like an action item list for that we can start off immediately walking out of this conference in terms of what could be done. I really appreciate your comments. Minister Popșoi, Moldova has felt energy coercion very personally, very closely. From Chișinău's perspective, what does real European solidarity look like in action? Not just as statements, some kind of aid will be required. And how could the international community support investments, not just in energy, but broader economic development that would reduce Russia's influence, not just in the country, but in the region?
Well, thank you, Olga. I would first start by thanking the German people and the German government for standing by Ukraine and helping Ukraine. Because any and every support that Ukraine receives, it is as much support for the Republic of Moldova. Because for us, it's not abstract. Ukraine's resistance is our survival. And by the same token, any and every support that Moldova receives is aimed to contribute to Ukraine's resistance, because we share the second largest border of Ukraine's border other than Russia. And the aim of the Kremlin was, with the energy crisis, to have a pro-Russian government in Moldova to create trouble to Ukraine, diplomatically speaking. Thankfully, they failed. But there was a lot of effort to get us to this point, because only 5 years ago, Moldova was a textbook case of energy dependence, of energy vulnerability. And now, Moldova is a poster child of resilience, not quite energy independence yet, but with a significant progress towards that goal. Initially, in the first weeks of the war, of the full-fledged invasion, together with Ukraine, Moldova has synchronized its grid with the European grid, joining ENTSO-E, which normally takes a year or more. We did it in a few weeks. And this is also thanks to the incredible support and facilitation from the EU side. Since 5 years ago, Moldova is no longer dependent on Russian gas. We had 100% dependence on Russian gas, now 0% dependence. In fact, we had triple dependence. We had 100% dependence on one supplier, one transit route, and one distributor. Now, that has all been diversified, liberalized, and resilience built into the system. As we are no longer buying gas from Gazprom, we are buying it on the international market. And at some point, not always, but at some point, the LNG that we were buying, some of it from the US, was cheaper than what we would have bought under the previous contract with Gazprom. Because when you don't have any leverage and you are negotiating with your only supplier, the only transit route and only distributor, you are a price taker. On the international market, of course, you cannot dictate prices, especially nowadays when things are very complicated, but at least you have choice. Other than diversifying energy supply, we have made the second most important contribution, together with the help of Germany and our European friends, reducing consumption, or rather increasing energy efficiency. One of the programs that I'm personally the most fond of, and I really envy my colleague, the Minister of Energy, for managing such a great program, funded through KfW and support from Norway, is eco-vouchers. We are helping the most vulnerable families to replace their highly inefficient home appliances, many of them from the Soviet times. Needless to say, energy efficiency was not big on the Soviet agenda. And many vulnerable Moldovans, especially retirees, still have all those 30, 40-year-old electric stoves. And you can imagine they consume electricity like there is no tomorrow. So with this eco-vouchers, we are replacing those stoves, about 70% of the cost. And these programs are really amazing, because it's great for the environment, it's great for the end beneficiary, it's great for the government, we won't hide it. It's great for the image of the European Union as a problem solver, as a resilience builder. So this is win-win all around. Also insulating public and private buildings to reduce consumptions and to increase energy efficiency. That all has been done in the last few years, and the process is still ongoing. And the third pillar is interconnecting our grid with the grid of the European Union. Now we're in the process of building 3 high voltage lines to connect ourselves to the Romanian grid, that is to the European grid, so that we're not dependent on the old Soviet infrastructure. Because we've had this winter, and in fact a few times in the past 4 years, our energy stability being tested, and a Kremlin attack on the power line that brings electricity from Romania to us, but briefly goes through the Ukrainian territory, was attacked by the Kremlin this winter, and we had blackouts in Moldova. But I have to commend the Ukrainian energy workers, because the high voltage line, the damage was severe enough that it would have taken at least a week to repair it. But thanks to the sacrifice of the Ukrainian energy workers, they've repaired it in 3 days. And we were able to reinstate power supply to our citizens. The same is true when it comes to the attack by the Kremlin on the hydropower station in Ukraine and the severe pollution of the main water supply for Moldova and southern Ukraine as well. the Dniester River. It was thanks to the incredible support of the European Union, the civilian crisis response mechanism, that helped us clean the pollution and reinstate water supply to the north of Moldova. And our citizens of about a third of the country have stayed without running water for about a week. So all that is an indication, a clear indication that at the time when the Kremlin is doing its utmost to make our life difficult, it is our friends and partners in Ukraine and in the European Union that are helping us to be resilient and to stay afloat. And during all that, we are not just muddling through, but we are reaching significant progress when it comes to our EU accession. And we are hoping that in the next few weeks, maybe days, hopefully, we'll hear some positive developments on that agenda as well. Because we have delivered, despite enormous adversity of the past 4 or almost 5 years, we have moved significantly forward with justice reform, with consolidating democratic institutions, rule of law, while also consolidating our energy resilience. Because again, I tend to be one of the more optimistic folks on our team. That's why probably I was made foreign minister. But even for me, if somebody would have told me 5 years ago that we would have zero dependence on Russian gas, and we would be building now 3 high voltage lines to connect Moldova to the European energy grid, I would say that maybe it's a stretch too far. But Moldova is now positioning itself not only to consolidate its own energy resilience, but also to become a reliable transit partner for our friends who are investing in Ukraine's and Romania's energy sector. And Romania is becoming quickly a regional powerhouse when it comes to energy resources. So to be able to transit Moldova safely, we are putting these power lines in place. And our American friends are also helping us to build one of the 3 power lines, so that including American investments are able to transit Moldova safely and reliably. So this is what happens when, of course, push comes to shove and you are pushed with your back against the wall. But also, call me biased, but when you have political will and clear determination to do what's right for your country. Because you would think that this could have and should have been done 20, 30 years ago. But we had a disincentive built into the system so that Moldova's dependency on Gazprom and on Russia remains in place. All sort of corrupt kickbacks to the local elites that kept Moldova dependent for 30 years. Thank God that page has been turned, and Moldova now is fully committed to consolidating its energy security to help regional energy security. And we cannot thank enough our German friends for helping us along the way, our European and American friends, and of course Ukraine for being this incredibly resilient friend and partner of Moldova. And we can only reassure all of you that Moldova remains an equally resilient and strong partner for Ukraine and for the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Popșoi. I really appreciate your remarks on addressing Russia's false narrative on how the energy that Moscow exports is always cheaper. And when it is cheaper, it always comes with the different types of costs, and it's usually a short-term discount with a long-term additional issues that come with that. And of course, your comments on the lessons learned from Moldova's and Ukraine's energy efficiency implementation, that actually resonates with us in Europe, in the United States today, because of the higher energy prices as a result of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So these issues are not just relevant for the region, but for the broader Western allies as well. It's my distinct pleasure to go next to Secretary of State Rochna on what Poland is doing in terms of its exciting developments and, frankly, this massive transformation all across from nuclear development to LNG and gas diversification for the region, but also looking into ways economically how to diversify away from coal and just broader decentralization. So all of this happening while you're defending NATO's Eastern Front and cooperating with allies like Ukraine and others on what the future holds. Could you talk about what's next in terms of cooperation and what kind of your experiences, how could they be shared, and where do you see future Polish, Ukrainian, but also broader European cooperation moving into the future?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here today with you, and I believe that the topics we're discussing today are extremely important for the future of our region, because energy resilience means the resilience of the entire economy and of the entire society. And it's probably difficult to say something more interesting comparing to our Ukrainian Moldavian friends have said. They're actually in a much more difficult situation that we have been facing here in Europe for the last years. But I'll try show you the Polish perspective, and Polish perspective is also very particular because for many reasons, I believe, mainly historical, geographical, we always had a bit more sensitivity towards how the energy markets, energy resilience should look like, because, as I said, of our long history. And let me maybe speak shortly about our historical approach. Basically, from the political perspective, already back in 2009, when the dispute between Ukraine and Russia arose about gas supplies, it was Polish former Prime Minister Jerzy Buzek, that was at the time the President of the European Parliament, that together with the former President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, they have proposed something they have been calling at that time the energy community. It was an initial academic concept of creating a cooperation within the European Union to strengthening European energy cooperation and European energy security. And then in 2014, again, when Russia invaded Crimea, it was Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland at that time, who has presented the concept of the energy union. So this concept, just to recall, is a political framework that is put within the European legal framework that basically should serve as a concept to build European energy resilience and energy security. Back in 2014, it was mainly about energy security, but basically it was based on three pillars, and these three pillars were namely energy security. At the time, we have been thinking about common gas purchasing capacity, about energy solidarity. The second pillar was, of course, sustainability, decarbonization. Currently, we see how much being not dependent of especially important fossil fuels can account for independence. And the third pillar was affordability. So affordability, which was translated at the time into having access to the energy that is affordable for the end users. And this is the idea that was presented back in 2014, but we have been introducing them in practice in Poland much earlier. Back in 2007, we have launched the construction of the big Polish LNG terminal in Świnoujście, and this was at the time when mostly in Europe you could have heard that why do you need a costly LNG facility and import of Qatar LNG when you can access cheap gas from Russia and transport it to Europe through pipelines that were built and accessible at that time. We have started to phase out coal. We have started to build much more gas-fired facilities. We have invested in renewables. We have invested in storage. Of course, with the time that has been allowing to access those technologies, and also with the huge help of European Union, EU funding, and cooperation with our closest neighbors, building interconnectivity. So yes, we have invested in our resilience and in our energy security probably earlier than our regional friends. What has made us definitely more independent and more resilient when the big crisis came, especially after the full-scale invasion, when the gas prices have risen up and we have faced big gas crisis. At that time, the Polish LNG terminal was already fully functional. The Baltic Pipe, another facility that allows for import of natural gas from Norway, again fully functional. So it allow us to import only from these two directions through these two facilities more than 20 BCMs per year, which equals the current natural gas consumption in Poland. And of course, if you are today speaking about resilience, the Polish example and the Polish pragmatic approach shows how much ahead strategic and pragmatic planning is important. But of course, we are today speaking resilience, but I would like you not to forget the two other pillars of the energy union. Of course, we can, and we are speaking today about this energy security pillar, about building resilience, but the two others are also very important. We all hope that the huge crisis we are facing today because of Hormuz, because of what is happening in Ukraine will end up soon. But this also means that in the coming months or years, we have to think about the two other pillars, which are clean energy, sustainability. It shows that being independent of especially important fossil fuels is important for how important it is for our resilience, extremely important measure. But the third one is also extremely important, which is the affordability. We need to thinking about resilience and thinking about energy independence, not to forget that we are building our energy system to deliver electricity to the end users, and if you want to keep our industrial base working and become competitive or remain competitive in the global competitive race, our economies need to be competitive. When we're speaking about large, energy-intensive consumers, we need to secure that they're able to get energy at the cost that are affordable for them. So if we are speaking about the energy security in the broader meaning, I believe that the three pillars we are discussing, which is the resilience or energy security in pure sense of its term, but clean energy, independent supplies, and affordability are also extremely important. And at the end, I would like to thank our, especially Ukrainian friends and from the government, from the business sector, because as Maxim has said, we can learn a lot from our Ukrainian friends, because what they are facing, what they have been facing for the last years is probably the best example how you can build your resilience. So what also Deputy Prime Minister Shmyhal has said today, building the centralized system, building redundancy, it's very important. But I will again end up with reminding of these three pillars that, in my opinion, remain crucial to building the long-term energy security and resilience of our energy system and of our economies, which is also extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. An excellent reminder about the necessity to balance the different pillars of security, resilience, competitiveness, affordability, and of course, sustainability and decarbonization. We tend to, as crises happen, we tend to prioritize some pillars over others, but maintaining that delicate balance is important for long-term system survival, resilience, and frankly, thriving economies as well. We will go to Deputy Minister Orensak next. Canada is geographically not as close to Ukraine as some of our other panelists here are today. But Canada has been an incredible supporter, very generously supporting Ukraine's energy sector and just broader economy, broader defense. When we think about G7 and the successful stories of how the coalition has worked together to send equipment to Ukraine, to provide financial support, in other ways that Ukraine has been supported, what are some lessons learned of what was done well? And as we prepare for this, it feels like the threats have evolved now going into this winter. They're a lot more complex and dynamic. As we go into this winter, how can the G7 coalition together, of course, Canada having a leading role and playing a very important role there, how can we learn from the last 4 years of what worked well, what didn't work well? And then the idea of, Mr. Timchenko mentioned this, creating this reserve, the strategic reserve of grid components and other critical components that we have a shortage of, not just in Ukraine, but now, frankly, globally, and particularly in the West. Can G7 play a role in this?
Thank you, Olga, for the question and for moderating the panel. And thank you to the Federal Foreign Office for convening this important event at a really critical time for Ukraine's energy system, which continues to be deliberately targeted and remarkably rebuilt under fire. And, maybe want to acknowledge as well that the experience of Ukraine just underscores the realities of modern energy security and the truly awful human cost when it is deliberately targeted. So Canada's commitment and our unwavering commitment to Ukraine's energy security rests on three core foundations. First, it's rooted in our shared values, our commitment to democracy, sovereignty, and the rule of law. Second, Canada's home to a large and vibrant Ukrainian diaspora, reflecting deep and enduring people-to-people ties between our countries that translate directly into sustained public, institutional, and private support. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And finally, as a leading energy and natural resources producer, Canada understands that secure, reliable energy systems are fundamental to national security, economic stability, and collective resilience. So the war in Ukraine is a war on energy security, and when an aggressor targets grids, gas storage, transmission systems, they're not only attacking infrastructure, they're attacking the functioning of society itself. So our commitment in Canada to Ukraine's energy security is anchored in our participation as a founding member of the G7+ support group for Ukraine's energy sector, and through our continued leadership of that during our G7 presidency last year. Last October, Canada delivered the first ever G7 Energy Minister statement dedicated specifically to Ukraine's energy security, committing to coordinated international action to support Ukraine's energy needs, its economy, and its people. And then building off of that, my department, Natural Resources Canada, and the Ukraine's Ministry of Energy met at the IEA ministerial meeting in February to sign a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in the energy sector. And it's this agreement that's helping to put a framework of cooperation in place, focusing on energy security, system resilience, and longer-term energy transition priorities that's helping to guide our work. Now, while in Canada, the federal government plays a leading role through its multilateral channels, the development assistance that we can help support, supporting sort of a broader ecosystem of expertise across government, industry, and civil society is also a really important role that we can play. While resilience is certainly not optional, we must recognize that it is built not only by governments alone, but by engaging the technical capability and the operational capacity across the Canadian system to help bring support to bear and to build up resilience and those reserves that we've been talking about. Sharing our technical expertise in Canada to support long-term recovery and resilience is an important component of that. For example, the Geological Survey of Canada is sharing knowledge related to resource assessment and mapping, supporting Ukraine's long-term energy and minerals planning. We've also shared Canada's advanced geospatial software tools and expertise so that Ukrainian surveying, construction, and engineering sectors can access high-accuracy satellite data to support infrastructure reconstruction. Our private sector in Canada has also demonstrated sustained commitment to supporting recovery in Ukraine. For several years now, Canadian companies have participated in a number of reconstruction and energy-focused initiatives, helping to translate engagement into practical project opportunities. We have organizations like the Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce, which play an important convening role, strengthening linkages between Canadian firms and Ukraine's reconstruction priorities. Our subnational levels of government who operate electricity systems in Canada are also contributing in practical and targeted ways. They're working with Ukrainian representatives in Canada to strengthen connections with regional counterparts back in Ukraine, which are all helping to support more tailored approaches. Through these efforts, we're not only supporting Ukraine, we're also learning from its experience under extreme conditions. The exchanges, what we've learned, has helped us to respond to crises with greater speed, coordination, and operational clarity. And it's also helping to reinforce our own understanding of what energy resilience looks like and the components of successful strategies in an uncertain global environment. Looking ahead, the role of the G7+ in strengthening energy resilience in Ukraine and across Europe is going to become more and more urgent. As Prime Minister Carney has noted, the international rules-based order is undergoing not just a transition, but a rupture. And in this context, coordinated action through the G7+ is essential to address vulnerabilities in energy systems and critical infrastructure. In that context, the experience of Ukraine reinforces a really clear lesson for us. Energy security is not purely technical, it's also strategic and central to national resilience, and the work that we are doing together and the lessons learned under very difficult circumstances is essential to building more resilient energy systems for our future.
Thank you. Resilience is an all hands on deck type of task. So it's a really great point right there, in involving not just the governments, but the private sector and the broader communities all have an important role to play. So thank you so much for this message. Assistant Secretary General, it's a pleasure to have you here. Even just a few decades ago, it wasn't as obvious that energy was an essential pillar of national and hard security. And in the last decade, especially the last 5 years, it has become a vital part of the conversation. NATO needs reliable energy, secure energy, but also energy solutions and energy security can actually, if you flip that coin, can actually strengthen capabilities as well and solutions. So as we think about those roles being more and more intertwined into the future, where do you see today's NATO's role that EU, that G7 can fill in terms of both assessing kinetic and cyber threats to the energy systems, communicating, sharing those threats, preventing them, but also working together to recover as quickly as possible when things do go wrong?
Thank you very much, not only for inviting me, but for organizing a very important and timely conversation about energy security. I think the speakers before me today have made very clear the importance of energy for our societies, for resilience, even for our ability to defend ourselves. So it is obviously both a national responsibility, but also a common commitment to defend our energy infrastructure, which is also why we last year, as our undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea was continuously being disrupted, that we increased our military deployment there. So NATO's role in this, I see three things, or three headlines. First, situational awareness. Second, preparing a coordinated response. And third, collective planning and capabilities. So if we look at how our energy grids at NATO today are being affected, we are seeing a modus operandi where Russian and others are deliberately operating under the threshold of Article 5 with a very clear modus operandi of applying deniability. So situational awareness, creating a common operational picture is a critical area for us. Here I would highlight three things. First, on the back of our increased military presence in the Baltic Sea, we have decided to explore the possibility of using autonomous systems for surveillance. Second, we have been working in recent years with the development of what we call Mainsail, which is a data sharing platform, which will allow us to fuel data from nations, from private sector, to provide us with a real-time operational picture at our maritime command facility in Northwood, and share that with nations as part of the coordination efforts of surveillance. And third, we are at our military headquarters in Mons. We are building what we call NATO's integrated cyber center to provide us with constant situational awareness in cyberspace, also on the energy infrastructure on which we are relying. So secondly, preparedness and response, preparedness for coordinated response. There, our role comes within coordination, mapping, and exercising. If there's one thing, I mean, we learned so much from Ukraine, unfortunately, and very sad background, but we've learned a lot, and not least on the importance of collaboration between military authorities at large, civilian and private sector. We've applied that modus in how we've approached the protection of our critical undersea infrastructure in recent years, and in the years to come, we will try and build on those experiences to promote and build a strong collaboration on our energy infrastructure on land. Then, secondly, on the mapping, we are at our military headquarters trying to better understand our dependency on what we call mission vital infrastructure. Right now, we are investing massively in our military capabilities. When the day comes that we have to defend ourselves, we will have to move those forces through military corridors. They will be relying on infrastructure, on energy infrastructure. We need to map this, understand what of that infrastructure needs to be available. So mapping, second important part. And then third, as it was also said earlier, exercising. Exercising amongst ourselves, exercising with industry. You cannot do enough of exercising. Then the final point, which is what we call collective planning and capabilities. I mean, NATO is in our DNA. For 77 years, we've been doing planning and capabilities development. And here, three themes. The first is the protection. A lot has been said today, rightly so, about the physical protection of that mission vital infrastructure. I would add protection in cyberspace. Today, energy is not only being targeted during a conflict, it's also been targeted before a conflict to prepare the ground, to reduce our ability to defend ourselves, to weaken our resilience. So we need also to have a clear eye on the need for protection of the cyber protection of the energy infrastructure. And I think that challenge has been even more daunting with recent developments in AI's arrival to cyberspace. We need to make sure that these new emerging technologies don't only become tools in the hands of the cyber perpetrators, but also for ourselves. So we are looking at now at, for instance, how can we develop digital twins that can be reinforced with AI in terms of continuously testing our systems to secure that they are readily protected. So protection is one important dimension. Then supply chain. And two themes here. One is liquid fuels. We talk maybe too little about our dependence on liquid fuels for defense. Today we are, as part of the new defense investments, we are renewing our bigger military platforms, but an F-35 uses, which will be with us for the next 50, 60 years, consumes 60% more liquid fuels than an F-16. You will see the same pattern with the new tanks, with the new frigates. And we saw in Desert Storm in Iraq that during conflict, our use of liquid fuels, particularly for aviation, increases exponentially. The daily use of liquid fuels for flights was 10 times the use of liquid fuels in Poland. And back then we were only fighting the Iraqi army. And when we see our dependence on liquid fuels, we have to address the fact, which is right now our refinery capacity is falling by 80% in 2015, it's estimated. We lack storages. Our supply chains are relying are stretched through regions such as the Hormuz that are very prone to conflict. 40% of our liquid fuels is fueled through Hormuz today. So there is an issue about how to ascertain our liquid fuels. Part of that conversation is also how and when to extend our own pipeline system towards the east. NATO has a pipeline system, was built to the old NATO on the west. How do we extend it east? So that's one conversation. Then there is another important conversation, which is about new energy. I mean, we will be needing data centers, we'll be needing batteries, we'll be needing synthetic fuels, and as we're building those capabilities, it's absolutely critical that we have a clear eye on the resilience of those supply chains. Yes, we've been talking, rightly so, about breaking away from dependence from Russian supply chains, but we must not replace one supply chain dependency with another one from Chinese supply chains. So here there is also a very important conversation that we have at NATO, but where some of the answers will be provided through our good colleagues at the other end of town in Brussels in the EU. So these were a few elements of how we approach energy. And again, we are learning tremendously from our friends in Ukraine, and I think we have a common obligation to ensure to learn from those hard-earned lessons. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our energy systems need NATO for protection, and NATO needs resilient energy supply chains and systems to fully operate and be ready. Your comment on we cannot do enough exercises, I think that's a powerful reminder on preparedness for known and unknown risks, because we're not even halfway through with the year, and we'll see what happens in the next, hopefully all positive, great things. But as we know, there are some surprises that we should still be maybe anticipating in terms of the energy systems. And the jet fuel conversation could not be more visceral in terms of the shortages that we're experiencing right now in the global market. It is my pleasure now to go to Stefan Capefera, who is the transmission system operator. And the voice of the transmission system operators is extremely, extremely important, because in the past, I think operators were seen as participants versus leaders and security actors, and someone who can really think about their role in the security chain. How does this new role, this new view of protecting the system, assessing the threats, both kinetic and cyber, impact your role, how you view your priorities, but also thinking through, we can't have an energy conversation without mentioning the Draghi report, also thinking through how does interconnectivity both can pose a risk for the systems, because better integrated systems are more exposed to cybersecurity attacks. At the same time, better integrated systems are more economic, more efficient, they drive market development, and are much, much better for the European market. market. How do all of these changes take place, and how do you see your role in navigating all of these different pillars?
Yeah, thanks, Olga, for also inviting a German TSO for this fruitful discussion and having also a more practical view on our daily challenges ahead of us. I will not be able to answer all your questions in only 3 or 4 minutes, but I think it's obvious and no need to talk about it once again that the energy infrastructure is the critical of the critical infrastructures in our societies. It was highlighted by the ministers at the beginning. I think we all agree. But there is maybe a need to once again remember that at least in the Central and Western European countries, our societies and also the energy suppliers, the DSOs, the TSOs, a few years ago were not really aware about the vulnerability of our energy system. Imagine that normally the so-called Saidi index, that's measuring the interruption of electricity supply in a average German household, is around 11 minutes. So if something per year. So if something is happening, it was based on an accident, it was based on construction works on the road and someone split a cable. This is something we were used to. What we have now learned with the situation in the Ukraine is that the vulnerability of the future is a totally different one. And that's extremely relevant because, Olga, you mentioned a minute ago the energy trilemma: sustainability, security of supply, affordability. And no doubt it was needed in the last few years to have a key focus in Europe on sustainability of the energy system. And part of this sustainability transformation is also helpful for the security of supply topic. So decentralized power generation based on renewables, no doubt helpful for us. The Minister of Ukraine mentioned at the beginning the prosumer logic. So someone is not only consuming electricity, he is also producing electricity by solar panels on his roof, also helpful for a more resilient energy system in the future. But at the same time, please have in mind that in the 50 Hertz control area, Eastern Germany plus Hamburg, we have the 2 biggest metropolitan areas, Hamburg and Berlin, in our control area. So never ever Berlin will be able to be self-supplied by renewables on roofs in the Berlin households. So we need transportation capacities. 50 Hertz is also working, and that's a topic of interconnectors, is also working for all these offshore wind farms in the Baltic Sea. We are realizing interconnectors to our friends in Poland, to our friends in Denmark. We will realize the first hybrid interconnector in the world with Bornholm Energy Island. And obviously, countries in the heart of Europe which are short on renewable energy will need this interconnected situation also in the future. So what are the key messages, what is needed for TSOs to handle all these challenges in the future? First of all, it is homework to be done by DSOs and TSOs. And I remember very well when Maxime and myself met the first time in Brussels 3.5 years ago. It was mainly about donations, support with assets to our colleagues in the Ukraine. And it's absolutely right what Maxime just said. Situation is now turn around it. Because now we can learn from the expertise of our colleagues in Ukraine, and we will do that because we will need it in the future. So what about training? What about spare parts? What about business continuity management? What about additional cybersecurity? All these topics, that's homework of the TSOs and the DSOs, and we started to invest more there. But that's not the only topic. The second key message is TSOs are part of the national security system. And to be honest, this was not the case 2 years ago. I remember very well, and many of you will remember as well, beginning of January, we have seen an attack to the DSO grid infrastructure here in Berlin. At this time, the colleagues in Berlin were not used to invite the TSO in all the working groups to handle this challenge. Of course, we were in a close contact with our colleagues from the local DSO. But the Berlin Senate was more focused on the local DSO and not on the TSO situation. So we are part of the national critical infrastructure, and a resilient strategy can only be realized together with the TSOs in the future. And last remark, it's about prioritization. It's absolutely true that we will need more assets to handle the challenges in the future as reserves. But at the same time, and we all know that, a lot of connection requests of battery storage systems, of data centers, of additional renewables is popping up and want to be fulfilled as well. So it is about prioritization when we talk about the need of assets for our energy systems in Europe.
Thank you so much. TSOs are part of the national security system. I think an excellent reminder for us, and how do we continue breaking the silos for critical players that need to be in the room, need to be part of the solution. It is my pleasure to go to Ms. Pavlenko for the final question that we have today. We have seen a shift in how Ukraine is being talked about as just a recipient of aid to now a strong partner, a source of innovation and support, and as someone that you can go into business with. Could you tell us what you would like to see? You know, you've heard a lot of really excellent ideas. What would you like to see this room commit, including perhaps maybe our panelists here? How do we really deploy Ukraine's experience into lasting, resilient partnerships?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Olga. And I will start from joining Maxim and others' statement that we are very much grateful to Germany, to German people for all the support to energy sector. Believe me, a lot of cities and municipalities in Ukraine know what the GIZ is, and they use a lot of equipment supplied by GIZ. And the Energy Support Fund has the biggest share of German money, and we are grateful for that. Now, to answer your question, I agree with you that Ukraine is not just now a recipient. Just an example, we do have a lot of European governments and companies who already consult with us, with companies, on how to increase the security of energy systems. And the EU Energy Security Framework, which, by the way, has to be presented today, as far as I know, already integrated some of the lessons learned from Ukraine, for example, the resilience by design or the need in decentralized systems. But not all the systems can be written in the strategies. There are some lessons learned from Ukraine, which I think Ukraine has a very unique experience, and to replicate these lessons learned, you probably should involve Ukrainian specialists. And for example, this is a protection of energy infrastructure. The minister was saying about that. My colleagues were saying about that. I have heard several times that probably EU member states don't need such level of protection which Ukraine has. But you know, it's so easy now to find a transformer or substation and explode it with a drone. And basically a lot of energy facilities can be a vulnerable target in the EU for the aggressor. And this is where Ukraine can help. Ukraine help to design the protection which can really be helpful. There are some lessons learned which will demand the collective efforts by the EU member states and I would say future EU member states like Ukraine. And that would be, for example, stockpiling and standardization. If you need to restore the system very fast, and as again my colleagues were saying about this, you need to have ready-made equipment available. And sometimes some equipment takes 9 months to manufacture. So it's much more efficient to work all together collectively to develop, I would say, some mechanism which can be similar to gas purchase mechanism in the EU. And I would give an idea to NATO that probably it can be supported within this 1.5%, which NATO countries decided to dedicate to resilience. There are some lessons learned, or let's say tools that Ukraine has developed and can be also used as a already a solution for the EU member states. For example, this is the Aid Energy electronic system, which is supported by EBRD, and it helps to match the requests from energy companies and donors' response. We know that there are some countries outside EU that already are looking at the system for the facilitation of quick recovery after the earthquakes. But probably some EU member states can be interested to use this for better coordination mechanisms, for example. There are some lessons learned where Ukraine is still looking for the answers, and we probably should do this together with the EU. And this is, for example, the need to balance the openness of information, of data, which is definitely needed for good governance, for transparency, for investment climate, and at the same time there should be a data protection in order to prevent serious attacks. And this is where Ukraine still has issues, and I think it also should be in the agenda of the EU, and we also all have to find some answers to that. And there are lessons which still are not learned yet. As the minister said, the war goes on and the attacks, they become complex. So the defense also should adapt and become even more complex, which basically means that in a few years, the EU member states and Ukraine will sit down together and I think update again the EU energy security framework. And Ukraine will be there not a recipient but a partner in creation a new energy security architecture. And to talk about commitments, thank you, happy to talk about commitments. I want to remind that these lessons learned were born in the war. And Ukraine is paying very high price for every of such lessons. We need to survive, and we need to rebuild the system in a better way. And in order to survive, we really need all your help to prepare for winter. It will not be easy again. And to rebuild better, again, we need you to look at Ukraine as at a partner, and we can help. We can help in gas sector with our gas storages, even with the possibility to increase the gas production. We can help with additional electricity generation from different sources. And we discussed a bit about the resources. Having the critical minerals resources, we do have them. Ukraine can be integrated into the value chains, which EU is going to build to manufacture new net zero technologies, as it states in the Net Zero Industry Act. So please use Ukraine, integrate it into your value chains, and we will be partner to help building the new EU energy security infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, we covered a lot of ground. So we will have a coffee break next until 11:30. However, after the coffee break, there will be several sessions happening simultaneously. Session 1, Energy Security by System Resilience. Session 2, Energy Efficiency and Renewables as Strategic Pathways for Enhanced Energy Security. And Session 3, Energy Security by Empowering People, Building a Skilled Workforce for Crisis-Ready Systems. Additionally, there will be members of the G7 group meeting in room number 1. If you have any issues on how to find these rooms, there are team members all across who will help you out. We will split this room into two for the upcoming discussions, and the channel assignments remain the same. These sessions will run simultaneously in the silent disco format. So to listen to the panels, you'll just use the headsets. Give it up one more time for our fantastic panelists and for everyone who was involved in organizing today's event.